Yeah, it's one of the ones I don't think a lot of people think about. It's not one of It's not one of the forefront issues of the internet right now, is it?
What are they for?
The idea that no, it's not one. It's not an issue at the forefront.
Oh, the four, right? Okay, I was like, four issues? What was this then? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was one of the things I did notice actually, was that there's not a huge amount of information about this out there.
3, 2, 1. So thankfully, I sit here a very smug Scotsman right now, Lewis, because England were in the final of the Euros on Sunday and they lost, which was not only great for me because I'm not going to have to hear about it for the rest of my life, but it also kind of motivated my topic this week as well. So the kind of aftermath of that gave me my topics. It's been a double whammy for me this week. It's been
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Dude, it's a shame though, isn't? Didn't you feel a bit sorry for England? You knew they wanted it so much, you know?
You don't watch football.
Football? No, I
And it's
don't.
not, see to be honest with you, throughout this tournament, I have generated quite a hatred of the England team because they're quite dirty, actually. They have been
I've
dirty throughout the tournament.
public, yeah, backlash has not been great. I've seen that much.
Yeah, and before it wasn't the team, though. It's more about like the commentators and it's more about the pundits. Like, they played in their group and they didn't really play any good teams in their group, and then they beat like Germany in the first round of the knockout stage. So there's still like 3 games to go after that, but they're already talking about like winning the whole tournament.
Yeah, it's coming
And
home. Yeah.
yeah, that like started on like day one. It was like as soon as they started playing, they were like, "Yeah, we're winning this tournament," sort of thing. It's the you don't want someone like that to win to succeed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got the impression that like all of all like the online stuff saw was basically talking about how the entirety of Europe just wanted England to win, and that's for a variety of reasons. They were blaming like the toxic fans, they were blaming the toxic players, they were blaming a toxic country. It was quite disheartening. I don't know. I actually watched it. It's the first football game I've seen in like years, and I was like, good game, good game. Those it seemed like everyone was fucking a hooligan on that pitch, but yeah, football, man.
I think that people like broke into the stadium as well. Like there was people who had tickets for the game
Yeah.
who were getting to their seats, and there was like someone sitting there. But because there was like thousands of them that were just like
What are you
sitting in
gonna
the
do?
seats, they were like, "Fuck off! We're watching the game." The stewards just couldn't do anything. There's like videos of like camera crews following them into the stadium. They're like breaking through gates and they're going up the stairs and they're just like finding seats. And it's like there's not enough
Shit.
police or like stewards here to deal with this, so they ended up just like sitting watching the game.
God, that looks so bad. That looks so bad for our country, I think.
Yeah, that is. It was an absolute shambles, to be honest. But if you didn't know, this is Guide to the 21st Century, a conversational podcast between two friends, Lewis and I, discussing topical issues and trying to navigate the minefield that is life in the 21st century.
Each week, Scott and I will be thinking of a topic that's been kicking around our minds throughout the week, and we bring that to the show where we disseminate our views, just share our opinions with each other a little bit, and we try and reach a couple of new conclusions that we wouldn't have been able to reach on our own.
Okay, take us away.
Yep, so it is me first this week, and as I was saying to you just before the show, I want to talk specifically this week about parasocial relationships. And the reason I thought this would be quite relevant is because we've actually mentioned this flippantly in a couple of our previous episodes. Like we'll just mention it here and there. For instance, a lot of like the ones related to like social media and personalities. And I think when we mentioned cancel culture to some extent, we're talking about the dynamic of what we call these parasocial relationships.
It's one of these terms that gets like pinged about all the time, and you see it
Mm-hmm.
online, and we have said it as well. But then when you start to think about it, it's like, hold what actually is this? Like let's like
Specifically,
reel it back a
yes.
little bit. What is this thing we keep talking about? Because it's like
Mm-hmm.
everyone thinks they know what it is, but no one's got the same definition, and we're all talking about it like we all know, but we don't really.
Exactly. That's what I was hoping to achieve with this episode, was to basically just like cement our understanding a little bit. Because I think you'll probably agree, thus far when we talk about it, it's pretty negative. But in order just to give like people listening at home what the actual definition of this is, basically a parasocial relationship is a type of psychological relationship that develops between an audience and a persona that's talking to an audience, and so seems really broad, and it is broad. So like, the first parasocial relationships that ever developed out there were between like politicians and the public. It's because the politicians would be looking into the camera and saying, "I'm here to help you," and this is where this like people, they like develop relationships these so-called parasocial relationships with people. As the media went on, we eventually got TVs, and all of a sudden people, like the psychological community, got wind of this, and they started realizing that people were developing parasocial relationships with, like, quiz show hosts and radio presenters. And in the modern age, we're now reaching the stage where people are much more likely to form these relationships with, like, celebrities or streamers and YouTubers. And it's the reason that this is really an interesting concept, and the reason we call it a parasocial relationship, is because it's inherently unlike a normal relationship. We are people are effectively forming friendships with people that aren't there
One-sided
to
friendships,
to
yeah.
talk with them. Yeah, exactly. One-sided relationships. It's interesting how it works, actually. To give you a wee bit of background, so it turns out you get such a thing as called a parasocial influence, and that is basically an influence or an interaction that you'll go through in which it basically feels like you're communicating with a person, but you're not. So, for instance, like if like you're at a start of a YouTube video, someone might go, "Hey guys, what do you think of my last video? Please hit me up in the comments." They are just talking to a screen, but from your brain's perspective, they are talking to you. Your brain is imagining what they would reply as if they were sitting in front of you, So your brain is reacting in ways that you'd react to having a conversation with a real person. Or, if like you had written a comment and they liked it, you would develop a connection with them. And the idea is that as you build up more of these influences, these parasocial influences between an audience and a persona, it eventually leads to a parasocial relationship, which basically is that it's like an illusion, but the illusion actually enforces like trust and bonding and like group understanding. And what's crazy about this is these are, like, psychologically the same traits that your brain associates with your friends. The people that you actually do build real relationships with. And that's why I think this is going to be so fascinating to talk about. It's because we have this really unique situation in which people are having their brain effectively tweaked over long periods of time to treat someone as if they would treat a close friend or family member, even though they don't know that person, they've never spoken to that person. And I think basically the result is that it'll effectively influence the way that you behave, because like we are influenced by the people around us, and we are encouraged what to do. For instance, if a random person told me off the street, like, your t-shirt looks fucking stupid, I'd say fuck off. If you told me that, I'd be like fuck off. But I think, like, oh, is it stupid though? So it's like these are the type of things where I think it would be quite interesting to discuss how potentially dangerous this is.
We're already getting to sort of, like, in my mind anyway, we're getting to dangerous territory because we're thinking about these one-sided relationships that people are forming online, and you can see that. I think it's pretty clear to me that your brain isn't set up to have these sorts of relationships. When we're talking about this, we're seeing your brain seems to be like looking for social relationships. It seems to crave those interactions. You surround yourself with your friends and your family. You want
Right.
you want those reactions.
We're pack creatures. We are social, exactly,
And
to our core.
it tries to find this relationship like online, but it's an inherently one-sided thing where it's like all give and no real take for you, or at least very minimal
Mm-hmm.
recognition. And you have to kind of give a lot, whether it be like donations or subscriptions to like streamers or whoever, to get a shout out on the channel. And it's like really,
Sure.
really minimal take from your perspective, but like a lot of give in order to get that. And that seems like it would only get, it seems like that would be like a bad rabbit hole for you to like go
Mm.
down.
Yeah. Isn't it like a really, genuinely, when you think about it, quite a crazy thought? Like, it's something that like happens, and it's not like a new phenomenon. The concept of parasocial relationship is not new to the 21st century by any means whatsoever. People do this. People do this with inanimate objects and imaginary friends, because they're effectively, you're forming a relationship in which you treat something the same way you'll treat a friend, and you'll think about it the same way you treat a friend. So it's crazy that we're in this stage where people are being able to influence so strongly by people they literally don't know. And that's the crazy thing. When you're saying the thing about me is that it's not just the thing. Sorry, from my perspective, that I think worries me is that it's not just the fact that it's one-sided. It's that there's no opportunity for mutual development. It's inherently going to stagnate because you have one person talking to another person, one person absorbing their views, but it's not like what I was thinking about was it's like antithetical to what the guide to the 21st century is, isn't it? because this is
It's
you and
very
I.
unidirectional influence. Yes.
Exactly. We're like talking about something, and I'll have an opinion, and when I'm just discussing it with you, we'll be reforging our opinions the entire time through this like back and forth, and that's something that just isn't there with this relationship. It's not possible, you know.
Yeah. Looking at it from this perspective, it does seem like a really really bad thing, and I'm seeing how like that one sided influence would happen to people. I was also thinking that you kind of have to assume that someone can only have there's like a number of relationships that one person can have. Like, say that number is like X. You
Mm-hmm.
can have like the relationship that you and I have. We couldn't maintain that relationship with like a massive circle of people. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's only so many relationships that you can have in your life, and that you have to dedicate a certain amount of time to and spend time with that person. And whatever the social benefit for you in that relationship is, you can maintain that.
Right.
So you can also say that one of these parasocial relationships, you're almost replacing like someone in real life, because you're investing this time in like someone else, and you can't invest that time in someone that's actually in your life, someone that you could have a
Yeah,
social
an
interaction
actual
with.
person.
So it's
Yeah.
like you're taking away one of the relationships that could be really beneficial to you, and you're
Mm.
giving it to this one-sided relationship that might not be good for you at all. You know, it seems like quite a toxic environment.
Right, I can see the potential definitely because you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. You are quite literally, and you know you've only got 40 hours in a week to chat to friends or whatever the hell it's going to be. You are replacing what could be talking to a person, and like learning and mutually exploring ideas the way that you do, as opposed to just sitting there and absorbing information from one source. And like this is that is already touching on what I think the first time we mentioned these parasocial relationships was when we were talking about like echo chambers online, because I think that I think it has to be surely like these parasocial relationships in which you have one person talking to large audiences, and these large audiences are literally in their head they're treating these people as friends, you know, like they're taking their opinion with more, they're like ascribing wisdom to it that they wouldn't ascribe to a random person, and this like person will be telling them what their opinion is, and all of a sudden all these people that this influencer personality is touching and affecting, they are going to very quickly agree with that opinion. No, it's like when fucking PewDiePie comes out and says, "Oh, that person's a bad person for whatever reason." You know, it doesn't matter who that person is or what his motives are. There will be millions of people that get on that bandwagon. And it's like, let's dox them type of thing. And that, I think that I first had thought that that might have been more of a symptom of echo chambers, but now I'm actually thinking that might be more to do with the relationship people form with PewDiePie in the first place.
It might have a compounding effect as well, where like PewDiePie has this like circle of influence where he says something and there's a bunch of people that just jump on the bandwagon based on the fact that someone they perceive as their friend has
Mm.
said it. But then there is also this like this bigger circle around that, which is like, oh, people are jumping on this, so we're going to jump on it as well. And it's like PewDiePie's circle followed by the echo chamber, and it's like this compounding, like people just jumping on whoever PewDiePie points his finger at.
Basically, what it sounds like every aspect of the internet encourages echo chambers. It's because then on top of that, you have like the sorting algorithm, which is then pushing all of your search results towards a particular direction. So you've got like influence from people. Oh, excuse me. You've got influence from like the search results and influence from the echo chambers and the communities. It's like that sounds like such a horrific combination of just in its own right there. And what so that's like horrific on its own. And because I mean we can, I think you can quite easily imagine how that could be put to like improper use or like, you know, morally dubious use. For instance, like doxing type of is a thing that happens with like streamers in the YouTube community a lot, where people have like these like rampant fan bases that are, you know, large for whatever reasons, but also like truly loyal and truly dedicated, and they're willing to like spend, you know, hours of a night harassing someone else on someone's behalf because you think you're trying to do that person that's never met you and you're trying to life a solid. They will never know that you've done it. They will never know what the results of your actions are, but still people go out of their way and do it. So
It,
that's what's.
it seems
Sorry.
like whatever benefit that you're getting from the social relationships that you have in your real life, you're not going to be getting those benefits from the relationship that you're having, even though you're perceiving that to be the same sort of friendship.
Well, it's an interesting one. It's because apparently that's what's mental about this. Because see, when I said like with a parasocial relationship, your brain chemistry functions the same way as if you're talking to a real person. That it's the truth. Like you could theoretically substitute social contact for parasocial contact. And you know how like human beings, as I said, we're naturally like pack orientated animals. We're like we are extremely social. And when you put, it's well documented that when you put someone in alone in a room for a long period of time, they start going a little bit fucking nuts if you don't let them talk to someone else. It's fucking COVID's been a great example of that. Well, it turns out you can substitute that contact with parasocial contact, and it works. It does fill that hole. It's because your mind is doing the same thing. So it's not necessarily that it's going to be like mentally affecting them in that way. But I agree, it's like a pale substitute. It's like fucking the real stuff and the knockoff brand. You've got the real stuff which gives you like, you're probing conversations and you're developing yourself and it's like a back and forth, even though you're still at least socializing. Whereas the other one is just socializing, but it's just like someone demanding and droning on at you. But apparently, in terms of like your happiness, it can be equivalent.
My concern would probably be that it's like your perceived version of your happiness, though, where you're having
Right.
like, because the relationship is one sided, but I guess the people who have these relationships, their brain perceives it to be just as valid as any relationship in their life.
Mm-hmm.
That they're just perceiving this level of happiness, and in fact, they're not actually gaining the benefits of what real two-sided relationships would give them, but their brain is
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they're getting the real deal. So
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
what I mentioned about your maybe brains not being developed for like the technological age that we have right now, where it's like you have so much access to these streamers and YouTubers, even though it's like very easy to interact with one of them, but it is this one-sided thing. It's like easier than ever before than it is to interact with these people, but you're not gaining the benefits from it, and your brain maybe thinks you are because of this wave of technology.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of the things that I quite quickly realized when I started doing research. It's because when I thought of parasocial relationships, I thought of like this new age bad thing. I was like, no, this is something that's birthed in social media, and and I was like, obviously thinking that's where all this comes from. But it turns out like the whole concept of human beings treating uh, non-people, like things as if they're things, and like having friendships with inanimate objects or like gods. Like for instance, the people can believe in a god, and that is very much a parasocial relationship because you are talking to someone and believe they're talking to you back, and it's that same type of dynamic. And like so parasocial relationships have been going back for like a long time. It's actually a completely natural part about how human beings cope and how we think and how we do form relationships. I think you're right though, that now we're just like in an environment where we've never been exposed to so much parasocial influences. For instance, someone sitting at a screen and looking at you and talking to you. Like that's new. Before TVs, we didn't have that at all. The closest we had was like a radio, and then you just spoke to people, and now you got TVs, and all of a sudden parasocial relationships were being much more stronger, and people started becoming like fans of like boy bands and like particular TV show presenters and celebrities and that type of thing. And then now we're living in this modern age where people are becoming obsessed with just like random people on the internet that are now called personalities, and it's just this ability to form these mental relationships. So it's not even like it's not a bad thing. It works, and there's reasons for it. It's almost like a coping mechanism for people that aren't social, but the environment we find ourselves in seems to be pushing it towards dangerous territory for me.
Yeah, I never really thought about it in terms of like the parasocial qualities of religion. And
Mm-hmm.
now that you've brought it up like that, I can see how that is like a parasocial relationship. Although I'm less concerned about that one because I guess the influence that religion would have on you, I think at least it tries to promote like goodness in people. It
Yes.
tries to give you a set of rules to follow that generally stand you in good moral stead. Now, obviously, there's shortcomings to it, and there are probably things that should evolve over time that maybe haven't. But
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
see that one as like a generally good influence. Even people are becoming like less religious, but I think the values that it kind of promotes are generally good. Whereas today, when you look at all these people on the internet, the barrier for you becoming like an influence has just been totally removed. And like
Mm.
literally anybody can start a Twitch channel or a YouTube channel, become rocket to stardom because they're quite funny or whatever. But then all of a sudden they're having this influence on people that might not necessarily be good. It might not
Mm.
be beneficial, and it might be bad.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing that was the first thing I realized was, okay, there are some instances of parasocial relationships that are clearly good, and like the concept of like religion or higher beings than yourself, that's a great example of it. It's because we know that religion existed for thousands of years. We know that it existed for the betterment of mankind. It's been like a
It attempted
structure.
to, yeah.
Sure, exactly, yeah. Like, and it's done a pretty good job of it. It's the reason we have the Renaissance.
Yep.
It literally formed modern day humanity. So like we know that it's there with the intention of trying to make a better society. Obviously, religion's a fucking can of worms, but we know that it's inherently, the concepts are good behind it. So that's an example of a parasocial relationship, in where it's clearly like the benefit is supposed to be in favor of the person that's forming this relationship. The difference is, though, that most parasocial relationships, I guess, online, are ones in which the not personality, the persona, as opposed to the audience, the persona has monetary benefit out of nurturing this relationship, right?
Hmm.
And that's where we can start talking about, whether it is morally ambiguous or wrong or not, because like it's clear the formation of a parasocial relationship is natural. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. It's like kids do it when they have imaginary friends. There's another example of like a parasocial relationship that's completely natural and fine. The problem that I think I have is when individuals or companies deliberately foster a parasocial relationship in order to change your behavior, or your spending habits or something like that.
Yeah. I'd never really thought of parasocial relationships as a good thing until you brought up like religion there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see how it would have benefits, but I think that there also has to be a certain level of awareness about parasocial relationships that people need to have, which I don't think that they do. Whereas like people are kind of following along with the religions, the people that are religious, they're following along with the doctrines of their religion,
Mm-hmm.
and those are, for the by and large, they're quite good. There's a certain minority of them that are probably bad or take things the wrong way, but by and large, they're decent values.
Mm-hmm.
I think you also have to sort of understand like why you're doing these things, and when, especially with like the younger generation that are being brought up on like iPads, they're being brought up on like Twitch and YouTube, they're forming these relationships that have like huge influence on them, but they're not
Yeah.
socially aware enough yet to understand like what's happening, and they're not socially aware enough to understand that this like isn't your friend sort of thing. They're perceiving it as like a friendship. This person's like talking to me, and you see it in the Twitch chats. You see some of the simps that go into Twitch chats and they talk about their like influencers. It's like it's really really sad.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the things I notice about it as well, when you watch like a streamer, these streamers, like, this is their day job. They can be on Monday to Friday, like 9 till 5 or whatever, or 1 till 8, or whatever hours they stream.
Well, yeah.
There are people out there that like watch them every single day. Like, you really need to dedicate like a lot of your time to watch a streamer all the time to like keep up to date with their content. And like, how much value are you putting on that relationship or that sort of like entertainment if you're putting that much time into it? Like, how much actual social contact are you like sacrificing for this?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe people do view it as like a source of entertainment. Like, when I watch like a stream or a video, I don't interact with chat or anything like that. I just watch it for pure entertainment quality. But there are people that are like actively in the chat like all the time, like they're mods and stuff like that are there
Mm-hmm.
literally as soon as they go live till as soon as they shut down. And I think this is like, so the barriers have been broken down recently that it's so new that we don't really know what's going to happen. Like, if we're going to get like 15 years down the line and like adults just like don't know how to interact, like if they
Yeah.
go out to like a bar or whatever, will they even go to a bar? Will it be a
Everyone's just gonna be
totally
sitting
different
online.
landscape? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny. That was actually a whole topping point in itself. Was how this affects kids, is because I think that's a huge. You mentioned a point earlier on, and you're completely right. Because apparently, it has been in recent years. There've actually been like new waves of research talking about specifically parasocial relationships with kids, and it's a bit of a no-brainer when you hear about it. Because apparently, parasocial relationships are most effective across your entire lifetime. Which is, it's almost obvious. If we're treating parasocial relationships, if your brain treats them the exact same way as a normal relationship does, then if you introduce a character to a child and keep that character in their life till they're 50 or 100 or whatever, then that's going to have a really potentially really really strong relationship if they've literally been acclimatized to it from day one. So these days there's been quite a lot of research done in how companies can effectively maximize parasocial relationships with kids in order to tie them in with a product. This is like the truly nefarious part, and it's like not only companies that do this. It's like content creators, it's streamers. Apparently, like see like YouTube, every year they have like every so often they have like workshops. Will invite creators to behind the scenes sessions to teach them how to maximize channel growth and like get the most out of their margins and that type of thing. And they literally teach people to implement parasocial influences. They don't say that term. They'll say like foster friendships with your group, make your viewers think you'll always be there from them, give them specific names unique to your channel. Literally just like small things that make you come across as friendlier. They're talking about that in the same sentence as maximizing profit. It's like form a community, make money. It's like, which one is it? You cannot have both of these in the same line. This is where I think it starts breaking down. It's when people start getting manipulated through this, and it's kind of bullshit. Because like at the end of the day, in order to form like parasocial influences, it's just being friendly. It's just like trying to be sociable with someone that's not there, and that's how people pick up on it. So it's like you can't even ban these. You can't say that that's wrong to do that, but it's happening nonetheless, and people are being manipulated as a result of it.
Well, the way you just said that there,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about YouTube coming together and bringing their content creators and telling them how to form communities and how to monetize the community.
Sure. Uh-huh.
Surely that's how like religion started. There was like a group of like really hyper intelligent, successful people that got together and they were like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we implement rules so that this
Mm-hmm.
society is successful? Except the goal is no longer to make people successful and keep them happy. The goal is now cheddar cheese. And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Your
you
channel.
kind of
Mm.
come back to it. I come back to it again, like I do all the time, and it's like money just seems to be like corrupting them. Where it's like
Mm.
because their goal is to just at the end of the day increase the bottom line, they look at these things, they see these parasocial relationships which have existed forever. They see religion, they see like the
Mm-hmm.
personalities on TV or whatever, and they're like, let's take that to the next level. Like, let's make someone your friend and let's
Exactly.
tell
Yeah.
them that they need to give you money to maintain your friendship. And it's like, you've just kind of put a price tag on someone's social
Friendship.
interaction, like
Yeah.
literally someone's time to be their friend. And it's like, that's seems like a very damaging concept because as much as I like you, Lewis, if you told me that I had to pay you £5 an hour to talk to you,
Imagine.
I'd tell you to
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah. 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 Fucking hell. Go skint by the time we finish these guide episodes. Then.
Exactly. But it seems
Mate.
like a really nefarious spin on
Yeah.
something that could be beneficial. And they're giving all this power to people who, and I would probably guess that by and large, the people that kind of pop up on YouTube and Twitch, a lot of it is like dumb luck. It's
Sure.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
striking when the
Yeah.
hammer's hot kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll play a game when it becomes really popular with like a Twitch audience and they'll like rise up. And I think a
Then
lot
all of a sudden they're
there
big.
has
Yeah.
to be an element of like luck involved in that, surely. So you can't even guarantee that the person that becomes massive is like a good influence on the community
No.
that they have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's that's kind of the concerning part, I suppose, isn't it? Is the fact that how they're taking advantage of it. It's just we've seen it at Twitch, we've seen it with YouTube, and it seems to be just becoming a bigger problem. And what you said earlier on, I think, seems to be the only way of possibly addressing this, and that is through awareness. It's because what we're talking about here, it's not. It's natural. It's a natural process. We're like what companies are doing. They're like hijacking right back there in the human brain, like the deep, the human subconscious stuff in order to take advantage of you monetarily. It's absolutely no different from the way that, like, when we talked about how social medias are like taking advantage of human nature. For instance, like, they'll mention that you've been tagged in a photo, and that's because deep down in the human, you want to see if you've been tagged in a photo. That's nothing that's out with your control. It's the exact same way that we're now forming friendships with people and tugging on you in a way that was never these things were never supposed to be involved in business. We are hijacking literally hijacking like the source code of human beings in order to manipulate them in markets now. And like when you're saying that's a bad recipe, man, like I think it's just, I think it's like the potential beginning of the end. You know, we're no longer seeing people as human beings. We're just seeing them
Mm.
as a potential sources of profit. You know, and it's so sick that this is being wrapped up in concepts of community and friendships and relationships and like networks. When in reality, it's just it seems so much more rotten than that.
It's getting kind of worse and worse as well because, you know, nowadays you see, I've definitely seen an increase in when a kid becomes like restless. I mean, you've got like a kid that's between the ages of, I don't know, like 4 and like 12 or something along
Mm-hmm.
those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Like when that kid becomes restless, it's like they're less, I don't know if their parents are like, they're not giving them any incentive to like go outside. There seems to be like there's a more immediate reward for a child to like sit on an iPad and to watch like a YouTube video or to play a game, and sort of they're not being pushed to go like outside. Because like when I was young and when you were young, there was no iPads, there was no games or
Mm.
anything like that. I just went outside after school every day and like interacted with people. Kids these days seem to be, especially when they're like, when they get aggravated and get annoyed, they just seem to be like, there's like an iPad like thrust into their hand, and it kind of keeps them quiet. And it must be, it must be dangerous for like a child to like grow up with these sort of like social
Mm.
relationships, because there's no back and forth development there. And surely that must be a big part of why humans crave social interaction in the first place, right? Because there's
Right.
like
Yeah.
benefit, there's like two-way benefit that we can have here. Like I can make you grow, you can make me grow. That's like
Part of it, right?
that's Guide's motto, you know, where it's like there's
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
people here
Exactly.
and we're going backwards and forwards. Like that's like saying, imagine Guide was just me talking to you and you going, and then you pay me for your troubles. Like what?
Yeah, fucking hell. Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I see it all the time as well. Like, see, for instance, like when you go into like a restaurant, see the amount of times you'll see kids sitting there, like youngish kids, you know, and the parents will be talking at a table. The kid will start to say something. What happens? Play your game, honey. You know, and then they just sit there mindlessly, sitting playing a game, and like they're not talking to anyone else at the table. Like, see if there's no fucking way my mum would have ever allowed me to do that. You know, I would have been sitting there listening to what other people were saying, and I think there has to be a detrimental effect, because like, you know, people always say that like social media is making us like bringing people together, you know, social media is forming connections, but part of that is pish, man. It's like, see, you talking to someone over Messenger is fundamentally not the same as you talking to someone face to face.
No.
It's watered down to like a massive degree. So as much as we can say, sure, you've got 1,000 friends on Facebook, that is simply no substitute for having a friend you talk to, you know. And what it seems to be, we're heading in that direction where more of these communities are just people either like talking online, or like the worst case to me is this parasocial relationship, where it's not only like this watered down form of communication, it's also like abundantly one-sided. It's quite
It's
concerning.
totally effortless on your side of things as well. If you want to sit and like interact with a chat,
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything. It's like I don't have to change in order to be here, unless you're going out your
Mm-hmm.
way to like harass someone or being abusive or a troll in the chat. It's like there are not a lot of lessons to be learned there unless you go way too far. Like if you're like
Yeah.
insist, for example, if you go out into society and you're in school, like as a child you must be learning all the time how to engage with other people, and like you're seeing the interactions like backwards and forwards,
Mm-hmm.
whereas you know you could probably say a whole bunch of stuff and receive like no feedback in these parasocial relationships. You put it in the chat and it's like never answered. You don't realize, you don't sort of change yourself. There's no evolution in your like personality. And
Mm-hmm.
because children aren't aware of the fact that they're doing it, and like you say, your brain analyzes it like it is your friend. It's sort of getting that fix. It's very, very easy. There's minimal effort on your part. Like your brain will actively try to avoid change,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like a path of least resistance. So you can see the sort of like immediate attraction, but how that's going to be very like negative for you in the long run. And when you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about like kids being in like restaurants and stuff like that, like there's an element of that where I understand. I was watching a video the other day that said if you have like a 2-year-old toddler and you take them to a restaurant, and like you can't really expect a 2-year-old to sit for any longer than like 45 minutes, otherwise they start to get aggravated. Now, I think at that point of aggravation, that's when an adult now just hands a kid an iPad or a
It
game,
is, yeah.
and it's
Mm.
like
Because it's easy. It's fucking easy. I
it's
can't
easier.
blame parents, right? You know, like when my mum, we used to go to restaurants. She'd come prepared with like 5 different coloring books and a board game and a this and a that and a this, just to like keep us stimulated sitting at that table. I can't blame parents for doing it because my God, it would be a fucking blessing. I'm sure parents like our parents' age would have loved to have been able to hand us their phone to play on. I just don't think it's what should be happening.
It's almost like a path of least resistance for like parenting as well, though, where it's like
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
you get to the sort of nitty gritty bit of parenting where it's like you bring a human being into the world. You've got like in an ideal family, you've got a mum and a dad, and you go to
Hmm.
a restaurant. You know, when your kid does start to get aggravated a little bit, or you need to do the hard part of parenting, like saying no to them, like teaching them lessons that they don't want to learn, like trying to
Hmm.
change them to better them as people.
Educate them, right?
All of
Hmm.
a sudden, you know, it's like, well, I don't have to do that if I just give you this iPad. And like kids
Yeah.
become nightmares. You know, they become when they don't get what they want, they just start to go mental and they get handed this, and it's like it teaches them all sorts of bad things, right?
Mm. Well, that is what's interesting about this actually, is because as you said, like there's like specific cases for kids when it comes to these parasocial relationships. And this is one of the examples actually where parasocial relationships might not necessarily be bad. It's because, like you said, like kids are, when they're that age, they're quite astute in some ways. And like it turns out actually that a kid's, it's been found that kids can potentially learn huge amounts of like social norms from parasocial relationships. So as much as they might not be learning necessarily, you know, and better themselves in other ways in terms of how that person is acting and in terms of like forming your own identity. Apparently for kids they can be a useful foil. Apparently also as well, another great example of parasocial relationships is for when you are like when you're a young person and you're trying to form your own identity. The idea is that if people have a relationship in their head that is by default completely understanding of you because they don't know you, you know, and the people end up ascribing certain emotions to these personas, then that can be effectively a good audience for you to start exploring aspects of your personality that maybe within your immediate vicinity might be squelched down a little bit more. So for instance, like there's people that are like but wanting to come out but like they would never do it to their parents. There are like they might, you know, for instance, go onto a YouTube channel of like a really famous non-binary or queer presenter, and that would be like an environment for them to establish their own thoughts a little bit and try and come closer to maybe where they want to be. So it's not completely doom and gloom, but you are right. To me, regardless of how positive this is, it is just a substitute for the real thing. You know, it's not. It's like the sugar. Well, not sugar. It's like the yeah, just the watered down
It's like a
version. I was like,
healthier version than
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I was like, we've been over this, Lewis.
Yeah, it's like I understand that there can be good aspects of it, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in the sense that I don't want kids to just like stop being. I guess I don't want them to stop being a part of these communities because I think teaching them like social norms is probably what like the kids channels on TV tries to do. You know, when you see like
Right, right,
you know when you
exactly.
got all these programs that my little brother watched like Dora the Explorer, like the male version of that was called Diego or something like that, and he watched that, and I'm sure it was like the program was kind of it tried to keep him enticed as it was going forward, but I guess because it's a kids show it also tries to like teach them things about like sharing and
Yeah.
problem solving, and like I can see that as being like a good parasocial relationship where he looks up to this character on this show who's kind of like an idealistic person, um and they can learn and grow from that. I guess the idea that I want to kind of drive into it is like draw the line and be like, this person is not my like it's not my friend. Like, see, instead of watching a streamer and looking at it like a parasocial relationship, like look at it through the lens that it is and be like, this is a show that I'm
That you are
watching.
watching a screen
That
right
this
now.
is
Exactly,
an
yeah.
entertainment show that I'm watching that I have no need to have like a prolonged investment in. It's like I will watch
Hmm.
this for as long as I'm enjoying it and understand that it's not like a two-way thing. It's not something that is necessarily beneficial for you. It might be
Hmm.
beneficial, you know, look at these things and try to take away the good parts, but also understand that this is not like a substitute for like real life friendship. Maybe you can learn and grow here, but do that, learn and grow, and then take it to like the real world where it
Yeah.
where it should be, you know?
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's all to do with reliance, isn't it? On one like pretty much a last note as well, I think it's worth in terms of like when we're talking about educating people and trying to make them aware of this. One thing to make people aware of is that like you are seeing a personality here. You know, the
Mm.
person that you're seeing on camera
Isn't a
might
real
not
person.
be
Isn't a real
well
person. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, more often than not they are going to be an idealized version of who they actually are. There are going to be things that they do, things that they think and say off camera that you probably won't like, but they're only ever going to be selling the positive side of themselves in order to appear more friendly, and that's how these relationships kind of grow. You know, it's a funny one actually, because I was wondering to myself, like, how easy would it be to deliberately create a parasocial relationship with your audience and know that it was insincere, and like, you know, how much of it was actually a facade? Like how easy would it be to do that? And I wasn't exactly, I was wondering to myself, like, is that a type of thing that people would see through, that you're being an insincere bastard? But then I remembered that like Bill Cosby was America's sweetheart for like several decades, and he was literally like a child molester, you know, which goes on really to prove that I think you can quite effectively fake your relationships on screen.
Yeah, there is like I think there's like a woke wave of like streamers that's coming out just now as well. Though I don't know if you know about the streamer. There's a streamer called Ludwig right now on Twitch, and he's just finished like this. He finished his Twitch subathon a while ago, and he basically became the biggest streamer on Twitch for a little while. And his whole mantra is like, "I'm not your friend." He's got like massive videos on like YouTube that are literally him just sitting at the camera and explaining to his audience that he's like in no way is he your friend in like any way, shape, or form. Like he's just you're his audience. Like he just sees you as like names on a screen.
Sure.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
there are content creators that are now kind of coming through like that, where they're like trying to
Mm.
promote that. And even though, I don't watch Ludwig stream, I don't know what he's like, but at least he seems to be promoting that sort of like healthy aspect of like,
Yeah. True
yes,
woke.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like watch the content, enjoy it for what it is, but like do not I'm not your friend. Don't be under any perception that I have any sort of committed. I'm not committed to this relationship like at all. Um,
Mm.
so I
That's
see streamers like that,
great.
and Moist Critical as well. His whole channel is sort of like anti woke, where he's like the woke generation that's like coming up, and he's actual woke, and he's like talking about how like things are going on. He's kind of like breaking down these barriers. It's kind of there's this new wave of like content creators. I feel like where they understand that this is a thing and they're trying to like avoid it at all costs, which I think is quite healthy, and I quite like that actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That does seem like a really great way of doing it, actually, and it's the type of thing as well where I don't know, it kind of ironically works in their favor as well, because they're like putting their cards on the table, and honesty is something that you like to see in people, so it makes you trust them more. So it's like it's still a parasocial relationship, but there's still like that's the thing. It's nothing wrong with that. There's just the awareness is there and the understanding between audience and viewers that there's it's not like you are not their god. See, I remember years ago. It's probably still a bad thing. But see that fucking comments you see on YouTube, and it's like, you know, you should see them in PewDiePie videos a lot. It's like, oh, Pewds, woke up this morning, I saw your video, and I have to say, it absolutely made my day. I've been feeling a little down in the dumps last 2 weeks, and da da da. It's like fucking paragraphs or paragraphs about how this content creator has saved their life and how like you have no idea the amount of changed their life. And it's like, you no, you're right. They have absolutely no idea. Like they don't know you. You know, they haven't seen your comment. I just always remember thinking it was really sad actually in a way.
I think when like when comments in that first started getting introduced, I think those type of comments, like you see so many of those comments like claiming that the content creator has just like got them at a hole or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or that they had a really bad day or something like that. I think there's probably an element of that that is true, because I've definitely been in like places in my life where I've like been in a hole, or I've been like feeling a bit down for a while, and I've like turned to. I remember the first time that I kind of found something was when I found a Critical Role at the D&D
Mm-hmm.
campaign. I remember telling you that when I found it and I really started watching it, I felt quite shit at that time in my life, and like I kind of watched that for like weeks and weeks on end, and there was so much content that I just kind of like invested into it. And by the time I got out of that hole, I was like, yeah, this really did keep me going for a while. And I could have been one of those people that put one of those comments out, but like I was never going to do that.
But that's the difference. You didn't write it out, you know. Like you can
But
feel it. That's fine. But
I feel like at the beginning of like comments, I guess somebody genuinely felt like that, and then the audiences started to see that would get a reaction from the content
Yeah, that
creator.
would get a like from the
Like the very
content
first
creator.
person that ever said that, the content creator probably pulled it up and was like, "Oh, really? Thanks a lot for saying that. Like, I'm really glad the content helped you." And like that became a thing that got like reactions. So it was like
Mm-hmm. It's bait,
an
really.
element of you like sending a donation so that, that donation appears on the screen and is read out, so that the streamer will react to like you, and it'll give you a tiny ounce of like take in that relationship. Yeah,
Recognition.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
I bet you so many people abuse that, and it's fucking sad. Is what it is.
Oh, it's really, really sad. Yeah.
It's like you
It's
don't
like,
have that relationship in your real life. Like you can't have a two-way relationship with someone in your real life. So you're actively like trying to pay for it online. You know, it's really really sad.
sad.
It's really
Really, yeah. Yeah. Not even sad as in like, oh, that's fucking sad.
I
What
we're
a
not
fucking.
laughing at
I
them.
mean,
We're
like,
saying
no,
that's
I mean that's
genuinely sad.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. It's the same with like, it's notorious. Like, I think like Twitch thoughts must be one of the most rampant examples of parasocial relationships that are forming online. Like it's just become, like it's what Twitch is almost known for now. Is that there's gaming and then there's like, you know, titty streamer gaming. That's an entire thing in itself, and like the comments is just absolutely cancerous.
Yeah,
Like people
all it is
donating
porn.
money.
It's
Yeah,
porn
literally, yeah,
where
yeah,
they're trying to say like here's my titties, but I'm also your friend, and it's like
yeah, 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 yeah. It's like porn, but the actress has like a 1 in 1,000 chance saying your name once you pay them on the spot.
yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah, it is sad. I think it's now that we've kind of spoken about it like that, it does seem like quite a nefarious way to like make money. It seems like quite an evil way to make money, actually, quite immoral. You know?
Yeah, yeah. As with a lot of things we talk about in the show, it really does come down to like the implementation of it. This is not something that's inherently evil concept. Like we can talk about how like the human chemistry in your mind works and stuff like that, and for forming relationships. I do start getting upset when it's clearly individuals or companies fostering this. That's when it's bad. And we've said it throughout the episode a couple of times. For this one, it's one of those ones where it's almost like a no-brainer. A bit of fucking awareness about what you're doing online as well. Dude, we should write a handbook on how to do, like how to act online or something like that, because it seems there's so many things that you shouldn't jump into and being aware of, because there's hidden complexity behind it that's influencing you in ways you're not even aware of, and this is a spot on example of that.
Yeah, I think the thing is though that because your brain kind of tricks you into thinking this is a real relationship, you really need someone to sit you down and explain.
Mm,
And it's not even that it wouldn't be that obvious to someone the benefits of limiting this, because it's the parasocial relationship is a very short term, immediate gain for you.
right,
Whereas
right.
you're trying to sit someone down and explain to them, well, actually, over the course of like 40 years of your life, this is going to be really bad for you.
This is wasted time.
Yeah, and I know that going out and finding friends is like not the immediate benefit that you're seeking, but it's going to be much better for you in the long run. Can you imagine explaining it to a 5-year-old? Like,
Yeah, God, actually, no. Yeah, that would explaining weighing up long term versus short term is always difficult and really really hard. I don't know exactly how this should get implemented or how you would make people aware of that. I really don't know how to even try and disseminate that information, but I feel that there's definitely an unawareness of this whole concept online, and like it's just how companies potentially can use you. It's one of those ones that's just a black box right now. Like, see, when I looked up online, man, you'd be surprised about how little information out there. Now, I said they've been doing research on kids. That's like new. Researchers on kids has only been started in the last couple of years. It's still a relatively fledgling area of science, and which kind of makes me think as well that the techniques are only going to become more sophisticated and the efficiency is only going to go up, because this is still relatively new. And that's kind of like a whole other thought process right there. Where could you take this? How far could it go? It's one of the ones we need to just kind of address right now, where it's still fledgling.
yeah, there's no like at the moment there doesn't seem like there's any like negative repercussions for like doing so as well. But and because I feel like the repercussions will be so long term, you like won't even realize what the problem has been. Like all of a sudden you'll be 22, you'll have had like 16 job interviews, and you'll have had no job offers, and you're like, why, wondering like why you can't get a job, and it's like you haven't developed socially.
You have
Like,
no social skills.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're just like
fuck.
not able to do that. Or someone's like, why can't I get a girlfriend? And it's like, because every girl that you've interacted with in your life has been through the lens of a screen. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like you haven't gone out to school and like asked a girl out and tried to, I don't know, like put something
Just
out,
converse.
put
Yeah.
something out
Uh-huh.
there that's giving you like an immediate response, and like try to like weigh yourself up because of that. You know,
Hmm.
that seems like right now we're in this age of like woke culture that we're not seeing this immediate negative reaction,
No.
so it's going to like progress to a point where I mean it's just going to get this is, I'd like to hope this is where like woke culture will like break down, where eventually it goes like so far to the point where like it just becomes like this really negative cycle of like bad,
Hmm.
and we have to just like get out of it. Like, you know, it's almost like we need to be punished for it as a society for us to like back away from it, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's how you learn things, right? You do something that's wrong, you get hurt or you get punished, and like you correct it. You do something right, you get rewarded. You keep doing that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
parasocial relationships on this level are like not teaching people that, I don't think.
No, yeah, the punishment, exactly like you said, is like so long leaning, and even once it does occur, you won't be able. Like, I'm quite sure that people 30 years from now, if it turns out that there is like some type of, well, we know there will be long term effects in how people form relationships based on the parasocial relationships they have, but do you think anyone 30 years from now is going to look back and say, fuck, I probably spent too much time watching Twitch, you know, if I hadn't, I probably would have went out and met people. I don't know if that'll ever be
It probably
something that
won't be associated with that problem, no, but
yeah, it'll be something much more rapid just because of the timescales we are talking about here are quite long. But I think you're right. It will be curious to see if we end up with a generation of like granddads and grandmas in like 50 years from now that just don't have any friends, you know.
and all of them are divorced.
Oh yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
Like
Yeah, because they rushed into the first
no
relationship they
one's
had.
together after like 5, 10 years. Like nobody.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God.
I mean, marriage and divorce is probably a topic for another day, though.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Probably try and keep those outside of parasocial relationships as well.
Yeah.